Welcome to Owen and Beru's BBQ. Today we have a special cocktail that all three of us chefs have worked on. It's called Punch with a little bit of Baby Yoda. That's right. It's a tropical punch, or maybe a stormtrooper punch. Biker Scout punch. Today I'm joined with Nick and Chris. Welcome again back. This
is Chris. Chris's first.
No,
second.
It's so just to kind of lay out the Mandalorian structure here. We've covered the entire season. Chris was on the first one with Jack, and Nick has carried the torch throughout the month of December. Chris, we finally got all three of us chefs together for the Mandalorian.
This is like my third. We did one with Ralph as well.
But
maybe Nick wasn't there for that one.
No, I was there for Ralph.
No, I did the one with Ralph with Nick and Ralph. Were you there for Ralph?
Oh, no, I was there.
No,
for
yeah,
Ralph.
we did. We did do a 4-1 with Ralph. This was the only. Oh,
sorry, Chris. You're easy to forget, Chris.
Yeah,
Well, I just punched him in the face. So we're going to talk. We're going to talk The Mandalorian and the last chapter, actually. So, chapter 8, Redemption, and hopefully, I can redeem myself in Chris's eyes for everything bad that I've said about him.
I'm fine, dude. I'm fine.
I'll
put myself on mute.
Our previous podcast that we recorded about the Rise of Skywalker, I was drinking a lot of coffee in preparation just to rise. This one, The Mandalorian, I feel a lot more laid back, where I can open up a brew and say, let's just chill for a little bit. So, The Mandalorian, how did you guys feel about the last chapter of season 1, how it finished?
Freaking awesome. This is Star Wars.
This show is awesome.
Yeah.
So much to unpack with the show. Like, I'm excited to see what's his name? What's John? Is it Giancarlo?
Oh yeah, Moff Gideon.
Moff Gideon. I mean, we all know him from
Breaking Bad.
Pollos Hermanos. You know, like, he is an incredible actor, and he's an incredible bad guy. Yeah. I'm excited to see what he's going to bring to the show. And apparently, it's a Darksaber.
Just skip to the end, Chris.
Sorry, I'm excited for it.
I was too. That was definitely for that little nugget for, like, diehard Star Wars fans to see Darksaber at the end. You're like, oh, is that freaking Darksaber?
Mm-hmm. But, and I think for all of those non-Star Wars fans, because I think that's one thing about The Mandalorian is that it's been, hey, we can all get along. We don't have to know a lot about what's going on with this saga or anything. Just step up to The Mandalorian and enter in. I mean, my sister's been watching it. My brother's been, there's a lot of people that have been able to, and I think, just pick up The Mandalorian, feel like they haven't watched any of the Star Wars movies and just enjoy it. At least with the Darksaber, even at the end, if they didn't know what it is, they're like, that's cool, and I'm going to get to know more about it in season 2. They didn't even have to watch the Clone Wars or...
Yeah, because my dad was one of those, because he basically binge watched, because he didn't have Disney Plus, so he binge watched the whole series of my sisters during Christmas, and he's like, wait a minute, there's a black lightsaber? What's that about? Like, and I'm like, oh, that's Darksaber. It's a Mandalorian. And they're like, what's a man? They don't understand it, but he thought that was the coolest thing ever. He's like, that's pretty neat. So, I mean, yeah, exactly. It's enjoyable, even if you don't know anything. It's one of the good things about the show. But
okay, so we started talking about punching Baby
Yoda,
and we jumped immediately to the
end. Yeah. I really enjoyed the opening of this. You see Baby Yoda in the side pouch of the biker scouts, and the fact that they just stop and then have communications like any soldiers would. Because they're like, oh, wait a minute, what's happening? Oh, Moff Gideon is killing random troopers because one of them talked to him. And you're like, oh, okay, we'll just chill out here for a little while. And And I was like, that because that's what people would do. I was like, I really enjoyed this 2 minutes of lighthearted comedy, and then even them target practicing and missing horribly at a can.
I laughed out loud. That was the best part. All I could think about was Ralph. And Ralph and his apologies towards stormtroopers who can shoot, but that was great.
And we've had two. That's what's really funny is that Chris, I don't know if you listen or not, but because Ralph defended it so much of them.
I was on the show, dude.
No, I'm talking about later. So, because in the Prison Break episode,
right.
The guy gets offended because he's like, oh, he was an Imperial sharpshooter, and he's like, I wasn't a stormtrooper. I was like, they just made it official canon that stormtroopers cannot shoot, and then they double down on it on this episode. So it's like,
I was a sniper, smartass.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
Bill Burr, love that dude.
Yeah, and I also like how it kind of at least explained why or what was going on between at the very end of the last episode. Like, does Moff Gideon know? Like, why did he open fire on all of the people in the bar at that time? Like, who knows who has Baby Yoda at that point? Mm-hmm. And at that point, only those biker scouts know that they have the asset, basically. Mm-hmm. So Moff Gideon, even though he doesn't mention it in the it was probably like the one moment that I was just like, wait, why are you giving them till sundown?
Yeah,
to decide.
That was really questionable too. Yeah,
I think that was the one moment where I was like, wait, and you haven't asked for the asset, not at once all. Does he at all? That was probably the one moment where I was like, wait, why does he want them?
We talked about this on the last episode too. Is that's one of the things that made because why did he open fire to kill other Imperials if he really wants Baby Yoda? It's that's a really dangerous gamble to open up fire into this cantina, because what if you would have hit Baby Yoda? It's kind of silly in a way. And then exactly, so now this establishes that he still doesn't know where the Baby Yoda is, and he brings in a heavy repeater cannon or whatever it's called. Yeah, it's well, now you've doubled down your destructive power.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, this is getting weird. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, he knows everybody that's in there, except for the fact that he doesn't mention the asset. What does he want with them? So that was my one kind of what WTF, as far as this episode. Other than that, I felt like this episode was really solid on finishing out the season. Yeah. All of the things that it had set up, as far as the Mandalorian's backstory. We got his hero arc. We got the answer to who saved the day. And I think it was probably the most obvious answer. We were all kind of wrong in thinking oh, it might be a Jedi, or those were some of our guesses.
I was a little bit let down with that. I mean, it's I didn't want the typical answer. It's a Mandalorian. Okay, all right.
Of course, he would see a Mandalorian and be inspired to become one of those, right?
Yeah.
Chris, didn't you have a guess on that too? Who saved?
Chris said Yoda. I said Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
I forget who you said, Matt. Or did someone else said something else?
Maybe I thought I said Yoda, because then he would Yoda. Be drawn to Baby Yoda or something.
Oh, right. Okay.
Anyway, we were all wrong in our guesses, but it was the most obvious. The Mandalorians saved the day.
I would say the IG-11 saved the day.
He did.
Oh, that is true.
That was one of those also kind of a WTF moment in a way, even though it was an awesome scene. Is that he saves Baby Yoda from the biker scouts, and you would think as his role as a protector, he would then return to the ship or escape, but no, he goes straight back to town where he's completely outnumbered. It's wait a minute here, you are completely failing your programming right now. But I mean, he does save by doing it. He saves the crew, but it's just okay.
I'll tell you though, that sequence. I was sitting right in this chair, looking at my screen, which you can't see over here. I have my screen that I play games on and watch movies and stuff. That scene where he rolls through town and starts rotating around, spinning and shooting people as they walk by, and having little Baby Yoda be like, "Yeah!" Like I had a smile from ear to ear through that entire scene, and then seeing him how he protected him and how he like turned around and like shot backwards. Like it was just that was just a very it was a very fun Wild West style shootout that was. I just really I love this show. Like I really love what Favreau and all the directors have jumped on and done with Mandalorian. They've made it such a likable crew. Like I was sad to see IG-11 go. I liked it. I loved him as a character.
Yeah.
I was waiting for that moment where he's going to come back and just be badass. You just like these guys, like, and
we lost Quill. I mean, they're not afraid to kill off characters in this show, and I'm fine with it. Like, okay, but I liked where we got to, where we actually finally got a crew together, even if they did disband them.
Mm. And what I thought was interesting too is that, like, it was so telegraphed, and it's like he's like, I've never taken this head off for any man.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, he's gonna take it off because IG-11. He's like, I'm not a man. I'm on the droid. I was like, yeah, he's gonna take it off. And damn, Pedro Pascal, bro, you gotta get yourself back to makeup. He looked terrible.
But see, that's what I liked about the review, though.
It makes sense. Yeah, he's had the helmet on. Yeah.
I mean, it's the same. It's the same way with Darth Vader. With the reveal of the mask, the fact that he looks weak underneath the Mandalorian mask there, like he's pasty looking, his hair's all matted down. He doesn't. I think it made more sense as opposed to like him taking off the helmet and it's like luscious locks like billowing out, and he like looks like the most romantic lead actor you want. It's just
that
like
was really good.
He's a frightened man that's bleeding and sweaty. It is not. I don't know. I liked that. I liked that. It
was pretty awesome.
Yeah,
I totally dug the scene where the forger. I don't know if they have.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I love that scene when she's just like, after they had all taken off and she's standing there with her tools. Because then we saw her. She's got her hammer and her the I don't know, poker, whatever the hell it was. And then when they creep up on her and she's just like, I'm also Mandalorian. I'm awesome.
And that the one hammer, like how it just like bashes the stormtrooper's like mask off, and like you see the jaw. Like I love
the plastic crate, whatever the hell they call it, and flying all over the place.
I mean, this show might be for your family to watch, as we do. But boy, they do some moments that, like, even if you're like, some things might be tame, they do some moments with that are pretty brutal and gruesome. And I admire the fact that it goes there and it doesn't let up.
Tangent.
Yeah.
So you guys know I'm catching up on watching Clone Wars, and I'm about halfway through season 2. I've had a busy month, so I haven't had a chance to watch a whole lot.
You're gonna love the end of season 2.
Yeah, so I've been going through season 2, and I wanted to share that too. That's a brutal show.
Yeah,
like
there's some episodes that are really.
They totally play these guys are just clones card.
Yeah,
I was like, damn. I was just watching the episode where the little snakes go up their nose and they mind control.
Oh my gosh, that creeped my kids out.
Dude,
I'm on a rewatch with my kids of Clone Wars on our tangent, since we're talking about Clone Wars. The new Clone Wars season's coming out. The last season, season 7, is due on Disney Plus. So if you're still sticking with us at that point, I'm sure we'll talk about it. But on the rewatch, with my kids, and they've seen some episodes here and there, but like Clone Wars is all over the place. I mean, I think we were on our message group here. We were talking about like there's a chronological way to watch it, or you can just watch it as the episodes roll out. But
works either way. Yeah.
They're all over the place, like somewhat. And so we're watching it in actual chronological order. And yeah, there are some episodes that are coming that I'm just like, oh no, like my kids are going to be like freaked out. So I see your comments there. Thank you. I don't know what you're talking about. in the private chat here. Anyway, Clone Wars though gets pretty brutal. Enjoying it with my kids though, and so excited about the next season that's coming. So
yeah, I'm pretty pumped about it. I really want to jump into Rebels. Really want to jump into Rebels because I love. What was the book that I read about? It was the book where Ahsoka and what's his name? Oh my God.
Ahsoka and
you guys mentioned you mentioned his name as like a Sabine.
Oh,
and
Ezra. Sabine?
Ezra. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So the book where Ezra and Sabine meet. I loved that book. So I love the whole relationship of the rebels. And what's his name? Who's the big brute guy? Looks like
Zeb.
Zeb. Yeah.
Zeb Gorelios, or whatever his name is. So I know these characters from a couple of the games that I play, my Star Wars games on my phone, and kind of piecing together and learning their backstory is something I love. I love those stories, and it ties into, like, again, going back to, on our last episode, we're talking about the rise of Skywalker, talking a lot about the EU, and talking about a lot, about the Thrawn era, and their dealings with all the rebels too. So looking forward to it. I'm going to try and get through 5 more seasons of Clone Wars before I do that, though.
My kids have, I guess my one point is that my kids have also identified with the clones now, where they're like sympathetic with the clones. And I think that's one thing that the Clone Wars does really nicely, is that it actually gives you their story in a way that, like, you're like, oh man, these dudes have lives.
Yeah, they even do that in the. It's not in the chronological. It's not the first episode, but it's the first episode with the Tordarians. But it's where Yoda's trying to approach, and Ventress is trying to prevent him from approaching, and that very first scene where Yoda says, he's only got 3 clone troopers with him, and he says, take your helmets off, fit your faces I wish to see, and then they say, we all share the same face. And he's like, that may be true, but in the Force you're all different, and I was like, that's pretty neat. They established that from the very beginning. That
no, that's great that you mentioned that episode, and yeah, there's a lot of great things to like about it, but they Clone Wars goes all over the place as far as, like, there's episodes which make you empathize with them, and then there's episodes that are like scare the out of you, because you're just like, what is going on with these creatures? So anyway, sidebar on Clone Wars and all of the animated stuff.
Before we go back, can somebody please do some justice with General Grievous and give him a goddamn movie? Like, he is such an awesome character that they need to do more with it. I feel like he got just the short end of the stick.
He did.
Oh,
well, that's what I mean. I think Jay and I have talked about this, and I think Matt too. Like, if you watch the original Clone Wars series, which is the 2003 to 2005, right, the introduction of Grievous is in that series, and he is such a bad A that you're like, I want this guy, and you don't get that,
even how it ends too. It makes more sense.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, let's get back to the Mandalorian. That's what's brewing today. Okay. The Mandalorian is we learn his name. We also learn Kara's full name in this moment. We learn that Greef Karga is a magistrate, so apparently, like, he's not just
We also learned that Kara is an Alderaanian.
Yes, that's right. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that's a good thing to maybe that even adds to her backstory as to why she hates the Empire. Yeah. I mean, I loved the fact that and I know this is in the previous episode, but I love the fact that when the Mandalorian goes to get her, the one hook that he has for her is like, well, this is the guy's Empire. It's like the guy's Imperial. Like she has such a death wish for anything that's Imperial that, I mean, seeing her carrying like with that big gun, just taking down stormtroopers, it's just such a cool moment. I loved her. I loved her throughout this entire episode. This last episode was great. So
we also learn about Moff Gideon too, that he was a former Imperial regional governor and a member of the Imperial Security Bureau, so like the CIA. And he was rumored to be executed for war crimes, but apparently
which makes sense why he's rolling with these death troopers. Because I think death troopers, I think like CIA, FBI, like higher up, like a little bit more elite than you're just your normal, regional governor. So, we're also getting a little bit more of Mandalorian's history here too, because we also hear about the Night of 1,000 Tears.
Man, you guys are just beat for beat. I've got all these, and you're like getting them. Yeah, like exactly. That's one of my questions. So, what is the Night of 1,000 Tears? Because it's not the Purge. It's something else. And it's got to be it's got to be an order or something.
But I assumed that was part of the Night of 1,000. I thought that would be a part of the Purge or something like that. So I mean, we're clearly going to get more Mandalorian history if somebody's like popping out this Darksaber and starting to wield it around. I mean, this Darksaber is something that united the Mandalorians in the past, and it's something that's got a lot of history with the Mandalores. So the fact that this guy knows who he is, and she knows who he is, Moff Gideon, I felt like it was a nice setup and a nice payoff that we finally have a proper villain for this TV show. Like up to this point, like we thought maybe the Client was it. I think that was like some of the criticisms if you were kind of trudging along with these middle episodes and you were like, oh, I need something more, than just these one-off, like, villain of the week kind of characters. We finally get it with Gideon.
Did you guys realize that the troopers that were there with Gideon were the 501st?
Oh, I had heard about that the 501st like had basically volunteered to be basically their extras. It was kind of part of a way that they kept their cost budget down.
Yeah, because they'll do it for free. Yeah, they're diehard fans.
Yeah. They were one of the biggest reasons was they're running out of costumes.
Yeah,
they didn't have enough stormtrooper costumes, so they brought in the 501st, which I think is really cool. So those who don't know the 501st, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the 501st it was a charitable organization that started back in
still is
is a charitable organization that started back when like the Phantom Menace came out, I think.
Probably or even before that, but yeah, I mean there's tons and tons of divisions all over the world, and they're broken up by states in the U.S. and you can just Google them and join. As long as you have a pretty good costume, you can join for free. And then they have meetings every month, and you can.
There's trials too, like you have to swim a mile
in the armor.
And you got to do an 8-minute mile in the armor. So
you do the salmon walk uphill in the armor.
By the way, those biker scouts do not look like they could do a 10-minute mile. Like
Jason Sudeikis.
Yeah. I'm just saying that the way that
the most hated man on Twitter this week.
Oh my gosh.
I couldn't get over that. It's like, people were so upset that he punched a baby, and you're like, you realize that these are fictional characters and he's punching a CGI / puppet character. Like, it's like an hour-long video of him just like constantly punching it.
And he's actually just punching a bag. You actually don't even see him punching the child.
Right. Yeah. You realize Baby Yoda is just a puppet.
No, he's not. No, he's not.
I think that shows how much love goes deep for the Mandalorian. So
it is. It's a good show. I mean, and what I liked about this episode also is that it was a perfect blend of action, character development, and humor. And humor is always a good thing because, like, you have a couple of different lines. Like the first one, because we kind of skipped over it, was like, when they break out the heavy repeating blaster, and then Kara's like going, "I can't be taking capture," because they'll use the mind flayer on me, and then they're like, "That's not real." Like that's just that was just a myth. And she's like, "Oh, really?" And just things like that. They were just nice little lighthearted moments in a serious situation. Even me, like just being a dork, when they say, the Mandalorian is not a race, it's a creed. I'm already looking at, Apollo.
Yeah,
Apollo
right?
Creed.
That was a nice, like, little, like, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but the fact that they wrote it that way, and he's right there when he says it's a creed, you know, it was just like, oh, like an Apollo Creed.
Yeah, like an Apollo Creed. Yeah, that's where my head went. And I was like, funny. But, let's see here. So yeah, and then like little things like the duality or the conflict of Mando and IG-11, because like you see this as soon as he indicates that Quill is actually dead, Mando falls right in step with his hating of droids and thinks that, you know, he's fallen back on his killer programming. You killed Quinn, all this, and of course then he saves the day. And then going back to what we were talking about. Is, you know, he gets shot because Gideon blows up the battery of the heavy repeater blaster and then shoots him. And this is what I thought was interesting. It's like, so was it, you think it was something special about Gideon's blaster, or was it just that he was that close to him with the Beskar could not hold the blast from the back of the helmet? Because he's clearly shot in the back of the head.
I thought that he got hurt when the explosion happened. I mean, you know, like you land, you know, that forced blowback, and then like take your average football player that gets knocked in the head. You know, you're going to get a concussion from that. So I just assumed that it wasn't just like the fact that he got shot in the back of the head. I thought it was the blowback of that moment. Okay, because that's what I took that as being. So.
But IG-11 saving his life, though, made you kind of wonder, like, well, you think he'll have a different opinion now of droids, because IG-11 saved his life 3 times, basically, in this episode, you know, invading the town, actually repairing the back of his head, and then sacrificing himself for the greater good of the crew. So I doubt it, but I'd like to think so.
I mean, I like the character arc of that. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, I like we found the last puzzle piece of his backstory there. I'm sorry if you've already mentioned excuse me, I don't think you mentioned it, but that last puzzle piece of, you know, the full sequence of his parents fleeing the B1s, right? Or the B2s. And putting them into the wine cellar, essentially, right? And we got the reveal, like, who's going to open up the door. I think one of us said Obi-Wan. Maybe it's me that thought that.
Well, who was going to take down the actual, like, robot, basically? Like, who was going to kill the battle droid?
So, but when we got to see, when it opened it up, we saw a Mandalorian standing there.
Yeah.
It looked a lot like Boba Fett.
But they were all blue, and I thought there were some articles about how this was Death Watch, or that there was something about like the actual like insignias on those actual Mandalorians that were Death Watch related, which would go in line with Nick's idea that this sect or his like raising in the Mandalorian faith has always been a little bit more like extreme than
the purists.
Yeah, than what we've seen with like Sabine, for instance. Right. So that would kind of go in line with the whole Death Watch. Like perhaps they saved him.
Now, have you gotten to a Death Watch episode yet, Chris? In
no, I have not. But I am familiar with them from some like the Star Wars games I play and stuff. I've gotten a lot of these character development there. But yeah. So I mean, I just thought it was cool to see that final puzzle piece. And we got a little bit the most out of that the backstory when he was, you know, recalling his time, and we know that Moff Gideon played a large role in his childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow, yeah. I wonder if we'll get more of that in like the future season. You know,
of course.
So,
and what's cool is too is they mentioned, as I say they, you know, reading stories somewhere. I believe Disney mentioned that they're going to be weaving in a lot more Skywalker saga characters that we know into season 2.
I had read that too. I think Nick and I are probably the most skeptical of that. Like what, who, and how.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll proceed with caution with that until I see it.
At this point, I trust what they're doing. I'm just going to trust what they're doing.
Just they did like a bang up job.
Just like we trust our commercial break to none other than the best of the commercials, as we give you one right now. Oh boy, that was a really great commercial. Oh my gosh,
sick commercial.
I wanted to mention, were his parents in some kind of Life Day celebration? Because they're wearing these red robes, just like Chewbacca wore in Life Day. But I digress. They're similar. They're red robes. Life Day. Come on, it's coming. It's making a comeback.
Well, you guys did hear that they're going to do another holiday special, right?
Yeah. I hope they do.
They're thinking about it, yeah.
And Jon Favreau should be the director.
I think it was actually his idea to do it.
Yeah, it was.
Do it. Give him the keys to the kingdom. I don't care. He can do no wrong, right? Like he's going to be basically adorned like a suka at a convention center.
Well, Bob Iger's already calling him like the next Lucas.
Well, I mean, I think as long as you have Dave Filoni and Favreau together, you can't really miss.
Filoni's got swinging a huge Star Wars Johnson. He's
got the knowledge. That's the
I wish he did the Rise of Skywalker.
I think he would have pulled in a lot more references, but
I mean, I think Matt and I probably talked about that even before the first one was released. That I would have trusted it more if Filoni would have been entrusted with the whole trilogy. I would have, probably been a lot more positive about it.
I would have been excited if he was given Rise of Skywalker as opposed to J.J. Abrams. Only in the fact that, like, I feel like he would have pulled all of these threads together a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
So. Because again, as we mentioned in our previous podcast about the Rise of Skywalker, if you have not seen it, some of the things that we were critical about is how it didn't connect to some larger threads together. But as far as the Mandalorian goes, though, you had some other notes.
One of the threads I thought was really interesting that could easily have been missed. So once they escape the cantina down through the sewers and they get down to the armorer. I literally liked a lot of things that she had. So when she explains that, the Baby Yoda is what they would call a Jedi, even though it's more like a Force-sensitive creature. But what I liked about it was how she said, it's time for your residual now. And she gives him the mud horn that he actually rejected early on. But he took it, no objections at all. And that was a really big character swing for him. And I think that he finally accepted that his fate is now intertwined with Baby Yoda from now on.
Well, and she said, "You're a clan of two."
You're a clan of two, but that means that he didn't object, and that's the thing is that he just he's like, "Yeah, you're right." Like, and like I was like, I like that. I like that it was just that, and you have, and I think it was probably the fact that she said that you now have a foundling in your care, and he understands what it's like to be an orphan, and you are
the father.
Yeah, within just a few sentences, I think it kind of really drove a good point through, and she gave him an option. It's like, either return it back to its kind, which I don't know how he could do that. That was a lot of research, or he's basically your Padawan or, foundling. So I know I sent you guys a picture of that on our chat of a Baby Yoda in the full Mandalorian armor, which I thought was adorable. I mean, I don't think that would happen, but I would just probably melt if I saw Baby Yoda in Mandalorian armor. I'm like, this little waddle, in a little suit, like
we've seen him trying to. Yeah. We've seen him try to imitate the Mandalorian. I kind of always picked up from what she said there that season 2 would pick up with him actually trying to return him. Okay. Actually trying to go on this quest. That's what I took from it. I could be completely wrong about that, but I just thought that was setting up season 2. Like he's on a quest to return this to these wizards. So, but
which could explain the introduction of other Star Wars characters.
Well, unless they and there is rumors of a casting of a young Luke Skywalker for the Kenobi series, but I don't know how. I mean, that's going to take place almost 20 years prior to this show, so I don't know how that would even connect. But if you're going to show a younger Luke, you're going to have to cast a new Luke.
Well, exactly. I mean, think about sorry, Chris, in was it Clone Wars or it has to be Rebels? Rebels, yeah. With the Darth Maul Kenobi thing, you see that even in that episode of a young Luke. running in the distance,
Yeah, it's running in the distance, but yeah, I mean, like at least for the live action, like if you're gonna. So I also was kind of wondering, like Skywalker Saga, like are we gonna see a random C-3PO or R2-D2 thrown in? Who are you meaning in the Skywalker Saga? Like, are we gonna see? So, but anyone in the main trilogy of original trilogy, like Luke, Han, or Leia, you're gonna have to recast them.
Yeah, and I personally would not like that. I don't want any of the main characters. I don't mind seeing like a random bounty hunter or even a Wedge type character or something like that. But I don't want a Luke, Han, or Leia.
Okay.
That's just, I don't want main character. I don't want that because that's such a audience draw for that. Like I want to stick with just like, hey, this story is already working as it is. Just keep it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that, Nick. I do agree with you on that wholeheartedly.
So as they escape, go ahead.
I was gonna say the okay, so it's not the Skywalker Saga characters, but if you think about the timeline of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of beating a dead horse here, but you can go back to the Aftermath series. There's a lot there that takes place during this time, and I know I alluded towards the idea of the final order from Rise of Skywalker kind of is developed in this book series I'm referring to, the Aftermath series, in this time frame. Right? So if you think about in this time frame is when all that stuff's happening. So if you're looking for there might be some tie-ins with the child. That might be the reason for the search of the child. It might be a catalyst in any type of resurrection and or creation. So I think there's a ton of potentially really cool tie-ins that could happen. And seeing how, with Filoni at the helm, and Favreau at the helm, I think their willingness to tie into the EU is probably far greater than J.J. Abrams was.
No, and I mean, I think that's one thing that The Mandalorian has been successful about. Even just name dropping Life Day. I mean, or like throwing in the staff that Boba Fett used in the original holiday special, and the Mandalorian's wielding it. Disintegration rays. Like all of these like things. Like, and again, even as a casual Star Wars fan, I know people that are watching the show and they're just. Whether they get it or not, they're just enjoying it for what it is because there's enough substance there that keeps them interested.
Like I want to see the character of like Ray Sloan, or Gallius Rex, those guys. Again, check out the Aftermath book series if you see that. I'm not going to get too far into it. I don't want to reveal anything for anybody who might be listening to or might plan on listening to. But the characterization there between like a fallen empire and the rebuild of an empire, with those specific characters there's a lot there. There's a lot they could get into, and I think that the Mandalorian could play a big role.
Nick, you were about ready to say with their escape through the tunnels,
right? It's keeping us on track. Yeah.
The unique R2 unit. Were you going to get to that, or
I was going to say that we see a very unique R2 unit. I think this is the first R2 unit we've seen in the series, but this one is almost like a River Styx type moment where you have legs and arms, and it has a push pole, and of course they're on a river of lava, so it's fitting that it would be
I wanted to like throw in a Force Awakens quote here, but that's not how R2-D2s work. Like when I saw that, I was like, that's not how R2s work. But I liked it, nevertheless, I was like, okay. So, and also we didn't mention the all of the Mandalorians that were killed.
Yeah,
in the tunnels, like, and all of their like suits, like clearly like some stuff went down, and they wiped them out. It's like go ahead.
That was interesting because in the episode 3 when they all come up to help Mando leave and flee, he basically tells them that now they're gonna have to leave the planet and find a new place, and they clearly chose not to, which was kind of crazy. Like they chose to stay, I guess, defend the only home that they know, and they paid the ultimate price for it. which is kind of sad in a way. So it makes you think, even though the armor survived as we know it, like how alone now is Mando really?
Right.
Because they basically, from what we know, all perished and all their armor's just piled there. It was kind of a sad and spooky moment. And then going back to IG-11, another full circle thing of him volunteering to sacrifice himself. Because basically, so at the end of the tunnel, we've seen that it's blocked by Imperials, or imps as they're calling them, and IG-11 volunteers to self-destruct. So we know that Quill did leave the thermal detonator inside of his chest.
Maybe there was something where he just couldn't unwire that. Like that would have been it would have blown up on him. So he just left it in there. Like there's some kind of I don't know, death trigger. What do they call it? Like a dead man's switch kind of thing on that.
True.
So, but I liked that there was a payoff for that, because even with the first episode, I was like, oh man, I hope we see that thermal detonator in his chest go off. And then at the end, you're kind of like, no, I don't want him to die yet. This is like the end of Terminator 2 when he's going in the lava.
True, so true.
So,
because that's what I questioned that immediately as soon as he stepped into it. I'm like, wait a minute, IG-11's a pretty skinny droid. And I was like, and that's molten lava. I was like, his legs would be gone within a bit. Which I was glad they at least showed that as he kept walking, and he kind of started to hobble and was struggling to get through it, because I was like, okay, that's at least believable, Yeah, I know what you mean though, because I mean, just those IG units are so cool, and from the very beginning, you always wondered what they could do, and the fact that you've seen him spin and spin and spin and just shoot and kill, you're like, man, you wouldn't want to mess with any of those things. But yeah, he sacrificed himself, kills all the Imperials, and just when you think that they've gotten out, Moff Gideon shows up in his TIE fighter, and probably the funniest line of the entire episode is delivered by Greek.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I love it.
Yeah. Baby, do the magic hand thing, And I mean,
my kids lost it on that line. I mean, they love anything with Baby Yoda, but that line was hilarious.
That was so good. It was just perfect timing, because it's just and then Baby Yoda's like, what? You crazy. And then, we forgot, that also, the armor gave Mando a jetpack.
Right. And we saw the payoff of the jetpack. Yeah,
which it actually leads to my only criticism of the episode.
Okay.
Is that, when he receives it, he's like, you can't use this until you've trained and it's become part of you, blah, blah, blah. They made it a point to say that he can't use it yet.
Well, he said that he did do some training on it before.
Yeah, but she basically is like, well, you got to train on it some more.
And then he was able to use it nearly flawlessly.
Okay, but all he had to do, though, because I'm with you, Chris, because I was looking at there were a couple things in this episode that I was like, wait, why did they give him until sundown? And the other one was the fact that he was out of charges. They couldn't blow up the grate, and then later you see him with charges, but he gets some more from the what's her name? The armor. He gets some more from her. So I was like, okay, that checks out. Now, when it comes down to the jetpack, basically all he does is he flies straight up, shoots at it with his grappling hook, holds on, throws a couple charges on there, and then lands safely. So we don't really see him doing anything fancy, saluting someone, because I guess that's upper level.
That's skills.
That skills. But I'm with you there though, Chris. I was kind of looking at that. I was like, well, at least he just flew up and landed. So that's all he really had to do. So, but cool moment though. It takes down the TIE fighter with a couple charges. You get that moment where he's like, no, and it actually sells it better than James Earl Jones as Darth Vader. So the no scene, and kind of ends the episode with Mando basically saying oh, hey, Carrie, you're going to stay around these parts for a while? You don't want to go back to the forest moon there where you can just kind of fight people with your tether electric tether, and so she's going to hang out there. Grief Karga has like completely absolved him of any bad doings with the guild. He's basically like welcomed back into the guild. So apparently we'll see Mandalorian doing maybe some bounty hunter stuff in the next season, perhaps.
Well, we still need to find out what's going on with that bounty hunter that didn't die. I forgot her name.
Oh,
the
ones that were left on the ship, or
no, in the desert. In the desert.
Oh.
Was she dead?
Nope, she wasn't
She's
dead,
not dead.
and we got to find out whose boots they were.
Oh,
Right.
he's talking about the one that
Right.
walked up to the body that people thought was Boba Fett.
Yeah. Right. So, other ideas for season 2, like since we're kind of
Well,
or
clearly,
you have a couple.
clearly
couple of
Moff Gideon's not dead, so he's going to be, pursuing still for the child. I can't think. I'm an open book.
I'm holding out for Darth Maul.
I don't.
My original crackpot theory, which you guys all pooped on. I'm still holding out.
I just can't see Darth Maul really being in here.
Dark Saber.
Okay,
I
so one thing that I wanted to mention is my brother. He's a huge Boba Fett fan, and he had waited to watch The Mandalorian. I kept saying, like, come on, man, like, here's my Disney account, like, just watch it. No, I'm just gonna wait till they're all out. So he finally waited till they were all out. I basically was like, watch this show, you're going to love it. So he basically binged the entire season just in one setting, and he was transfixed, like could not, like, I don't know why he waited that long, but he binged the entire season. I was just kind of like asking him, like, yeah, so what did you think? And he had a few nitpicks, like he felt like The Mandalorian was a lot weaker than what he thought The Mandalorian should be. And I explained
so is Boba Fett.
Yeah.
But I was explaining that I think that The Mandalorian's still in training, though, for all intents and purposes. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this is kind of like his hero arc. But it was interesting since he did binge it, like the middle episodes, I don't think dragged on as much for him because it was like he could just roll into the next one.
Right.
And by the time he did get to the Bill Burr episode, he was like, Bill Burr! And he was really excited. But yeah, he thoroughly enjoyed the show, just binging it straight through. And the one complaint is that he had to skip all of the intro stuff. And I wonder if some smart person out there, or if some marketing genius would just put all of the episodes into one movie, put it on a VHS cassette.
That sounds like
It sounds like what?
Like Jack bitching about Battlestar Galactica, because they always had those flashes at the beginning.
Oh.
He's like, I was hated because it spoiled the episode for you. I'm like, not really, but okay.
But I mean, this season could have been one movie.
Absolutely.
And he did bring up, I thought, a really great crackpot theory. He was basically like, well, the Mandalorian's going to clearly get the dark saber and unite all of Mandalore. And I was like, okay, maybe season 4.
Right.
But I liked his idea, though, about the fact that, here from humble beginnings, like perhaps maybe that dark saber will pay off long term.
I'm sure it will, but I mean that's what was supposed to happen with Bo-Katan Kryze or whatever, at the
without getting too spoilery, Nick, but we also know that happened a long time ago. Sure. Based on this time frame. So we'll just say that happened a while ago. So sure. Where we saw the Darksaber last to where it is now, we know some bad stuff went down. Sure. So we'll just have to leave it at that. Anyway, I know we've been talking for a long time, podcasting for, as our listeners don't know, but for almost 3 hours. Any more thoughts on The Mandalorian? I know we all really thoroughly enjoyed this season. Chris, probably of most of all, I'm curious about, because I know we missed you for several episodes. And I truly, our heart goes out to you. I know you had to deal with some personal stuff during that period of time. It's not that you didn't want to be with us. And I don't want to pull back the curtain too much, but I know you could not be with us.
Yeah. I've I've really enjoyed every episode of this series. It's just been so much fun. I think I said at the top of the episode that they're just it's such a likable crew that you want to be around with. And I was sad when IG-11 went, just like you guys were. Like the show is just so well done. I think it has a lot to do with the fact of who's leading it.
Mm-hmm.
You got some of the best creative minds, not only the best creative minds, but the best creative Star Wars minds on the job. And I think that's true. That shows itself in what you see week to week on these episodes, and it shows itself unlike some other Star Wars properties we may have been reviewing. But I feel it. It has that grittiness. It's got like the gritty Clone War-y, I say that that's just relevant to me right now. The grit of those cartoons, it's got that feel to it thanks to Dave Filoni. So I'm excited to see what they can weave in and out. I really do hope that they take it the route of the EU, books that are published out there. I want them to jump in and out of those storylines because I think it's just such rich storylines just waiting to be seen on screen. So we'll see, man. I hope Disney Plus survives without it.
I'm always curious about that kind of thing with rights and fees, and even though because probably Disney and Lucasfilms owns all the rights to everything, it's kind of like what we were talking about with Rise of Skywalker. If you borrow from Chuck, Wendix, if you borrowed stuff from that, would you have to pay him royalties? Would you have to, give him, obviously you have to give him writing credits.
Yep.
Yeah,
give the man his money.
Yeah. Pay him. But
I
went to see the asset. That's
what I mean. So you wonder if Lucas and Disney because I've often heard people say that, why do you create things like Sith Troopers? Why do you make different versions of TIE Fighters? It's because, does Lucas retain the rights to everything he created? But if Disney makes altercations, do they owe him anything? And that's one of those where it's I don't know, and nobody does but them. But it makes sense in a way. It's why would we add in these storylines if we have to pay other people money for those thoughts?
But here's another thing too. Whereas I think the movie could be super macro and micro managed by lots of people with so much writing on the line, something like this was able to fly with a lot of it was able to fly with a lot of panache, and the people that were in charge to basically say no, you're not going to put Baby Yoda on a merchandise because I want this to not be a spoiler. And It was a very smart and I'll say it ballsy move of Favreau to say oh, that's it, we're not going to put it out there early. And even though, and they say Disney lost all of this money because they weren't able to market it, but you know what they didn't lose? A lot of fans, because, you can kind of look at it and say well, they didn't make Baby Yoda as some marketing ploy. They actually just let it ride and be what it is. So,
right.
Kudos to them.
So while I was in the other room, I was still listening in. And you get the most inspiration when you're taking a piss. But anyway, you just reminded me of marketing and royalties. One little Easter egg that came into this episode. I don't know if you guys heard about this or not, but the troop carrier that came into town was an old toy from back in the 80s. It was never in any movie. But so the Mandalorian recreated it based upon the toy that I had when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, first live action, we'll say. Version of that. Yeah.
Right. Fair enough.
So and it appears in other properties, but it was really cool seeing that come to life. All right. I know we have been podcasting for a long time. I hope for us all to be back again to talk more Star Wars. There's a lot of new Star Wars news, all burgeoning rumors. We even mentioned it on the Rise of Skywalker one about the possibility of a Rebels sequel, which would be great. And I hope for all intents and purposes that actually does still happen in this year.
Yeah.
For anybody out there that hasn't watched them yet, jump into the Clone Wars, jump into Rebels. Either one will serve you right. Clone Wars, obviously having a season 7 coming up soon. We'll definitely cover that and talk about that, as well as all of the other news related to Star Wars. Anything else from you guys that you'd like to mention?
Mandalorian scheduled to come out November next year, or this year, I guess now, and they've already got one episode I know in the can, according to Favreau.
Really?
Yeah. So.
Oh, we didn't talk about what Favreau posted.
Oh, the Gamorrean?
The Gamorrean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he said
in a loincloth.
Yeah. Weird.
Looks like a wrestler.
Favreau said something like, see you in the fall 2020, which is like a figure of a Gamorrean. So who knows?
And everything that they've done so far, it just feels like I'm playing with action figures when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Which I found all of them, by the way. I sent you guys a picture.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. Yeah, you have a Darth Vader case with a bunch of figures in there.
Still at my parents' house, but I'll have to get it one of these days and go back there.
Well, for all of those that can't go back to their parents' house to get their vintage action figures, you probably won't find them on Amazon, but you can find other things to whet your Star Wars fancy. But you can go to Amazon.com/JayandJack, and you can use our Amazon affiliate link to buy anything off of Amazon. You could rate and review this show. We would love that. Anything on iTunes would help us out, as well as sending in feedback to theforceiswelldone@gmail.com. We would appreciate that. There's a few patrons that make this show possible. You can go over to patreon.com/JayandJack to make this show possible. We'd like to thank all of our patrons from $1 to $100. But there are some patrons that make this show specifically notable, and I'd like to thank them. So, unfortunately, you're still going to have Rise of Skywalker themed names here because I didn't come up with anything different. Sorry. But for those,
are you recycling storylines like J.J. Abrams?
I am recycling them, as well as it's basically the same. I could use the ones from 2 weeks ago, but I figure these are a little bit more fresh. So
notice I didn't say it. You want to hear me gripe? Tune into the Rise of Skywalker podcast.
On that note, I'd like to thank Tack from Takodana, Exegol Eckhart, Ed the Emperor Post Carrier, Mustafar Maggie, and if this one works for you, we can say JJ Joanne. Does that work? No, that doesn't work. All right. And the Rise of the Drake. Thank you for doing what you do, and we appreciate for making this show possible. Just like the Haldo maneuver, this show is 1 in a million.
This is the one.
I have spoken for the last time.